The air was thick with the acrid scent of burning cities. The heavens above Earth had been torn asunder by the arrival of alien ships, vast and looming, their surfaces shimmering with an unnatural, metallic hue. Their guns, impossibly advanced, discharged with a horrific ease, reducing cities to ruins, turning entire populations into nothing but ash. There had been no warning, no chance to fight back. Humanity was caught off guard, overwhelmed, and decimated. The invaders, ruthless, cold, and technologically superior, had torn through Earth's defenses in days. First, there had been small skirmishes, isolated incidents, but then it was a flood, a merciless tide. Across continents, the aliens struck with surgical precision, annihilating resistance, leaving nothing but devastation in their wake. Their leaders were faceless, their motivations obscure. They were not here for resources or to enslave. They had come with one sole purpose: eradication. A brutal alien general stood atop the smoldering ruins of a once thriving metropolis, watching as his forces mopped up the last pockets of human resistance. With a glance, entire battalions were wiped from existence. His warriors were like shadows, each strike devastatingly efficient. They were not conquerors, they were exterminators. No one was spared. Men, women, children, all reduced to nothingness. As the last screams faded into the burning sky, a dark figure emerged from the shadows, seemingly from nowhere, blending with the chaos. A man. Or what appeared to be one. The American Boogeyman, a myth in the making, had risen. His name wasn't a mere coincidence. He was an echo of ancient stories, of death, fear, and retribution. For centuries, tales had whispered of a figure who came from the dark, a man who could vanish into the void and return to deliver vengeance. To some, he was a nightmare, to others, a long-forgotten savior. But now, in humanity's most desperate hour, he had returned. In the heart of what was left of a shattered military command center, the world's leaders huddled in fear. The United Nations was a ghost of its former self, scattered remnants clinging to the hope of survival. Amidst the chaos, they had all agreed on one thing: the alien threat had to be countered, no matter the cost. Yet, not all solutions came from conventional means. In a hidden chamber, beneath the ruins of an old, underground military base, a council of surviving government officials convened. The plan was simple, though its implications were beyond comprehension. They had heard the legends, whispers of a force so powerful it had once been considered a last resort. Now there was no choice. "Are you certain?" The question came from the leader of the Russian Federation, a man with a face hardened by years of warfare. His eyes glimmered with a cold light, the shadow of a past he wished to forget. The room fell silent as he stared at the map projected before them, a final plan for Earth's survival. "Yes," replied an elderly woman, her voice trembling yet resolute. The ancient texts spoke of them, the American Boogeyman, and Baba Yaga. The name of the latter sent a shiver down the spines of even the most hardened officers. Baba Yaga. A name that evoked dread, born from Slavic folklore, an ancient figure feared for her mastery over death and her inscrutable nature. A force of nature, a being so old that even time seemed to bend around her. But these were not stories to be taken lightly. These were the beings who would end the war. If they could be awakened. The rituals had long been forgotten, but the fragments of knowledge remained, scattered across the world. Old texts, ancient books, forgotten by time, had been preserved in secret. This was their only hope, awakening forces that should never have been disturbed. Forces of vengeance. Across the globe, similar scenes unfolded. Earth's remaining survivors made their final desperate plea to the ancient, forgotten powers. The Boogeyman would be called, and Baba Yaga would answer. The price of such power, they knew, would be steep. But the alternative was extinction. Atop a mountain in the heart of the Carpathian Range, the wind howled through darkened trees, and the earth trembled. A figure, draped in tattered robes of black, stepped out of the shadows. Baba Yaga had answered. Her cottage, suspended on massive chicken legs, twisted into view, appearing from the depths of the forest as though from the very fabric of nightmares. The woman, if she could still be called that, was no longer human, not truly. She was the embodiment of everything mankind had ever feared. Her eyes, glowing red like coals, reflected centuries of cruelty and wisdom. Her voice was like the rustling of dead leaves. "Come, then, children of dust. You have awakened me. I shall show you the meaning of your foolishness." As Baba Yaga set her gaze upon the alien invaders, something ancient and terrible stirred within her. There was no hesitation, no remorse. She was not here to negotiate or reason. She was here to end the threat in the only way she knew how. Back in the shattered remnants of what was once New York, the Boogeyman moved unseen. His presence was more than physical, it was a palpable force, an essence of darkness that consumed all light around him. Where he passed, shadows deepened, and fear became tangible. He had no name, no true form. He was not a man. He was an idea, a primal terror made flesh. His enemies would learn quickly that there was no escape from him. In the heart of the alien ranks, whispers spread like wildfire. The Boogeyman had come. The alien commander, standing in his crystalline war room, felt a ripple in the atmosphere. Something had changed. The air was charged with a malignant energy, and his soldiers, their fear sensors, designed to detect any threat, began to scream in terror. It was too late. The first blow struck, not in the form of a weapon, but in the form of sheer presence. The Boogeyman descended like a storm. With each step, soldiers crumbled, their will to fight evaporating under the weight of his gaze. In mere moments, he was upon them, tearing through their ranks with brutal efficiency. The alien general, once so confident in his superiority, now found himself caught in an existential terror he could not understand. Through the chaos, the humans watched in awe. The Boogeyman was not a hero. He was not a savior. He was a harbinger of vengeance. His war was not a battle, it was an execution. Meanwhile, deep within the alien war machine, a new strategy was unfolding. The invaders began to deploy their most terrifying weapon yet. The human resistance was fragmented, but the Boogeyman and Baba Yaga's sudden appearance had ignited a spark. The aliens, realizing their military superiority alone would not guarantee victory, began to prepare for something more, something monstrous. The battle had only just begun. Yet Earth's enemies did not realize that they were not facing a conventional force. They were up against legends, creatures of myth, of death, and of vengeance. The war for Earth would unfold in ways unimaginable, and the end was yet to come. This was just the beginning. The landscape of Earth had already shifted irrevocably. Where once there had been cities, highways, and humanity's greatest achievements, there was now only ruin. Alien ships still hovered above the remains, their glowing lights casting an unnatural hue over the devastated planet. The skies had darkened with the constant buzz of hovering war machines, their sensors sweeping the ground below as if searching for any trace of the resistance. The alien forces had underestimated Earth's will to survive, but they had made no mistake in their understanding of fear. The Boogeyman moved through the wreckage like a shadow made flesh, his every step an affirmation of the legend that he had become. His presence bent the very air around him, a dark aura that stilled everything in his path. He had no need for weapons, his body was his weapon, and his mere gaze could reduce men to quivering shells. The aliens had not prepared for this. No enemy had ever dared to unleash such an untamed force. His every movement was a perfect dance of destruction, a blur of calculated chaos as he obliterated the alien invaders with terrifying efficiency. He made no distinction between soldier and civilian, for to him, all were simply part of the same endless dance. He was a force of nature, an embodiment of humanity's rage, their darkest fears brought to life. His hands did not tremble, they were steady, sure, and unyielding. He did not fight for glory or honor. He fought because he was born to deliver retribution. Each alien he struck down fell not with the sound of battle, but with the finality of a life snuffed out by something that had never truly belonged in this world. Yet, for all the fear he instilled in his enemies, there was a sense of despair in his wake. For the humans who witnessed his rampage, the sight was not that of a savior, but of something darker. The Boogeyman had come to erase, not to save, and his presence hung heavily in the air like a storm that might never pass. The survivors saw him not as a protector, but as a harbinger, a reminder that the world had been brought to the brink by their own mistakes. In the shadow of this terror, Baba Yaga moved with an altogether different grace. Her steps were slow, measured, as though the world around her was merely clay in her hands, waiting to be molded. The witch's magic was not born of brutality. It was the power of the unseen, the feared, and the forgotten. While the Boogeyman tore apart the enemy with unmatched violence, Baba Yaga controlled the battlefield with a cunning and an eerie sense of inevitability. Her powers were not just of the physical world, but of the mind itself. She did not strike with fists or blades, but with whispers and visions, bending the very reality of her enemies. Where the Boogeyman left nothing but devastation, Baba Yaga left something far more insidious, fear that grew in the minds of those who faced her. The alien soldiers, once so confident in their superior technology, found themselves gripped by hallucinations, their senses warped by her magic. The ground beneath them would shift without warning, their weapons would turn against them, and their comrades would appear as grotesque, twisted versions of themselves. Each moment was an eternity of dread. Baba Yaga did not care for the destruction she caused. It was not about winning. It was about leaving her mark. The aliens had come to conquer, but she would show them the cost of their ambition. She was not just the embodiment of death. She was the consequence of thoughtless cruelty, the judgment that had long been forgotten. The witch did not need to destroy their ships or weapons, she only needed to take their souls. The clash between the two ancient forces, Boogeyman and Baba Yaga, was a paradox in itself. Where the Boogeyman was driven by a raw, unrelenting force, Baba Yaga's presence was a cold, calculated inevitability. One was a storm, the other was the darkness that came after. Together, they represented humanity's ultimate defense against the alien invaders, a force of chaos and a force of judgment. But as the battle raged on, the aliens began to adapt. The devastation wrought by the Boogeyman and the terror sown by Baba Yaga had left them shaken, but they were not without resources. They had underestimated humanity, but they had not underestimated what had been unleashed in response. The alien general, a figure who had overseen the destruction of entire worlds, now faced the very thing he had feared the most, the unknown. This human world was supposed to be conquered, to bend under their will. Yet, instead, it had fought back with forces that even their most advanced weapons could not comprehend. In the depths of their warships, the aliens activated their most feared weapon, a device designed not to destroy, but to obliterate all resistance, human or otherwise. It was a weapon of pure energy, capable of reducing entire cities to nothing in seconds. It would decimate any life within its range, rendering Earth's last defenses irrelevant. But even in the face of such an overwhelming force, the Boogeyman was undeterred. His eyes glowed with an intensity that could pierce the darkness itself, and his movements were the embodiment of a primal rage. He knew that the fight was far from over. The aliens had only scratched the surface of what humanity was willing to sacrifice. They had not yet learned that humanity was not a creature that could be defeated by sheer force alone. In the heart of the battlefield, the alien weapon came online, its power pulsing in waves that could be felt miles away. The very earth trembled beneath its might. But it was not the weapon itself that would decide the outcome. It was the will of those who had been forced to call upon the demons of old. The Boogeyman stood against the rising tide, his silhouette cutting through the flashes of alien gunfire. He did not falter, did not retreat. He was not fighting for a world he could save. He was fighting for the world he had come from, the world he had once been a part of. He had been awakened for this very purpose. The aliens had thought themselves untouchable, but now they faced the true nature of humanity's fight. Meanwhile, Baba Yaga's magic swirled like an inescapable storm, her presence casting shadows across the battlefield. Her power was no longer confined to the minds of the invaders. It had spread to the very air they breathed. She had become an extension of the world itself, an indomitable force that neither technology nor terror could truly conquer. Together, they stood as the last defense against the invaders. And though the war had only just begun, one truth was clear: the aliens had underestimated Earth. They had unleashed chaos, yes, but they had also ignited something far more dangerous. For when humanity had nothing left to lose, it would stop at nothing to reclaim what was theirs. And in that darkness, the Boogeyman and Baba Yaga would be their light. The Boogeyman's unrelenting assault had torn the alien forces asunder, but there was no room for celebration. The alien invaders had never truly understood the depth of humanity's resilience, nor had they grasped what it meant to provoke forces like the Boogeyman and Baba Yaga. High above the battlefield, the alien command ship hovered, a colossal, gleaming monolith of terror, its surface alive with pulsing energy. It was here that the aliens had devised their last, desperate weapon, a device so powerful it could erase an entire planet from existence. But the Boogeyman, with his brutal savagery, and Baba Yaga, with her whispered spells, had disrupted their plans at every turn. The weapon was their final gamble, their last hope of winning this war. The alien general, a towering figure of alien design, stood in his war room, watching as the chaos unfolded beneath him. His soldiers, once so confident in their technological superiority, now struggled in the face of terror. The Boogeyman's shadow had infected every corner of their domain, and Baba Yaga's ethereal magic tore at the very fabric of reality around them. Yet, despite this, the general did not flinch. He had seen worlds fall before, and he had seen what desperation could do to beings like humanity. The final weapon would end this, once and for all. But as the general prepared to deploy the superweapon, something shifted in the air. A coldness, a presence, something not of this world, descended upon the battlefield. It was Baba Yaga. Her figure appeared from the dark, drawn as though from the very fabric of nightmare. Her cottage, still perched on its giant, clucking chicken feet, strode across the battlefield, its massive legs crushing alien machines beneath it. The earth trembled with every step she took, and her eyes, red as the blood of fallen soldiers, blazed with a fire that spoke of things far older than the stars themselves. Baba Yaga had come to claim her prize. The alien general had thought that sheer force could break her. But he had underestimated the depth of her power. This was not just a battle of weapons, it was a battle of wills, and the witch was an ancient force, a primal entity of vengeance and judgment. With a flick of her wrist, she cast a spell that sent shockwaves through the alien command ship, cracking its surface and sending tremors through its mighty frame. The vessel's shields flared briefly before collapsing, unable to withstand the witch's will. Within moments, her magic had begun to seep into the very heart of the alien ship. The general watched, helpless, as his crew of soldiers began to turn on each other, consumed by madness. Their minds, once tightly controlled by their alien overlords, were now lost in a spiral of horrifying visions conjured by Baba Yaga's dark arts. Her power was not in destroying their technology, it was in dismantling their very perception of reality. At the same time, the Boogeyman's assault grew more ferocious. He tore through the alien forces like a wild animal unleashed. His every move was a perfect balance of chaos and precision, an unstoppable force of nature in a world that had dared to forget fear. The aliens had learned the hard way that no weapon could stop him. Not lasers, not plasma bursts, not even the terror of their massive war machines. He was not just a man. He was a manifestation of humanity's darkest fears, brought to life in the form of a nightmare. Wherever the Boogeyman went, destruction followed. His hands were stained with the blood of countless invaders, and with every alien he struck down, a terrible message was sent to the rest: "You are not welcome here." He fought with an intensity that spoke of centuries of rage, of a human spirit that could not be extinguished. The aliens, for all their power, were nothing compared to the relentless fury of a species pushed to the edge. Yet, despite the terror both the Boogeyman and Baba Yaga sowed, the war was not yet won. In the darkened depths of the alien ship, the final weapon hummed with terrifying energy. The general was not the type to surrender. He would not let his conquest be undone by mere myth and magic. He activated the weapon, a massive cannon designed to channel the energy of the stars themselves. The weapon's destructive power would incinerate everything: Earth, its defenders, and any last hope for survival. The weapon was now online, and its pulse began to grow, expanding outward like a cosmic heartbeat, ready to obliterate the planet. It was too much for even the Boogeyman to face head-on, and Baba Yaga's spells could not stop its momentum. For the first time, it seemed as though Earth's last defenders were facing certain destruction. But even in the face of annihilation, there was something else. Something that had been growing inside the humans since the beginning of the invasion. It was not a single force, but an idea, a will to survive, a desire to protect what was left of their world. As the final weapon powered up, something shifted. It wasn't magic. It wasn't technology. It was humanity, a force in itself, a collective spirit that even the demons and aliens could not comprehend. The Boogeyman, sensing the shift, stopped. His hands, bloodied and relentless, stilled for the briefest moment. His eyes, glowing with an inner fire, turned toward the source of this change. Baba Yaga's mind, twisted and ancient, reached across the battlefield, connecting with the very heart of Earth's survivors. She felt it too, the surge of determination, of defiance that had risen from the ashes. For a brief moment, the alien's weapon faltered. The pulse of energy that had been building toward its destructive climax wavered. It was not an error in their technology. It was the collective will of Earth's survivors, an unseen force that had not yet been fully realized. The Boogeyman was the embodiment of vengeance, Baba Yaga the embodiment of retribution. But this new force was something different, a new weapon of the human spirit. In that moment the weapon fired. But it did not fire at Earth. It was redirected, turned against the alien ship itself. The weapon's destructive pulse engulfed the massive vessel, tearing through its structure like paper, reducing it to nothing. The shock wave sent the remaining alien forces scattering, their unity shattered. And just like that, the battle was over. The aliens, despite their technological might and their final weapon, had been defeated, not by the destructive power of magic or the terrifying violence of the Boogeyman, but by the thing that had always defined humanity, their will to survive. But the cost had been great. Earth was scarred, its cities reduced to rubble, its population decimated. The Boogeyman stood among the ruins, his figure outlined against the smoke and fire. He was not a hero. He was not a savior. He was vengeance, a force that had been unleashed and had done its work. His purpose, though fulfilled, was not over. There were other forces that required his attention, other wrongs that needed to be righted. As for Baba Yaga, her work too was done. The witch had returned to the depths from which she came, her cottage once again vanishing into the darkness of the forest. The survivors who witnessed her had no illusions about the cost of what she had brought. She had come not to save them, but to remind them of the terrible consequences of what they had unleashed. Earth was broken, but it was alive. The final chapter had been written, but the story was far from over. The war for Earth had been won, but the true price of victory had only just begun to unfold.